everybody, it's James Schofield again, and the other day I burned an American flag. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, actually to this day, I posted a video where I burned an American flag. And when I posted that video, I got largely the response that I was expecting. Now, there were some comments that were either affirming or applauding or generally otherwise agreeing with my actions. And those ones, great. I'm so happy that people realized what I was doing and why, and honestly, why it's important that I'm doing what I'm doing. But of course, I was expecting the opposite to happen, and of course it did. I got a lot of hateful comments, a lot of sometimes threatening comments actually, which some of them actually kind of prove my point of my fear of Trump turning America into a fascist dictatorship, which one of the issues there is dehumanizing a group of people. So these comments did come out and they did kind of show that people are willing to dehumanize others and people are willing to threaten others with violence even in order to push their agenda, which is a very authoritarianistic view, a very fascist view that Trump, of course, emulates. Yeah, so we can see this with Trump threatening violence regularly, sending ICE agents out, which are kidnapping people, flat out kidnapping people, and you know, you can make the argument that, of course, some of them are illegal. Yes, I completely understand that. But there are people who are legal residents of the United States and even U.S. citizens that are being rounded up by ICE. Kind of violent. Now, the other thing, of course, he is doing that we've seen is that he is going out and basically federalizing the National Guard. Now, here's the thing. The National Guard can be deployed by a governor if he needs them. But of course, there are loopholes that the president can utilize to federalize the National Guard and still deploy them into states. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds right now, because this video, I do just want to address the comments and be able to expand on either my responses that I already made or give responses to comments that I did not reply to. I will be making a video after this one that's going to be addressing a few different key points showing that Trump is a fascist dictator in the making. So stay tuned for that one. But let's get to the comments themselves, okay? So I've got my laptop in front of me. I'm going to be looking at these comments. I did go ahead and, full disclosure, prepare them ahead of time so I could have some of my responses and be able to, well, honestly think rationally, because some of these comments did get me a little worked up. And before I do get into the comments, I do want to upfront apologize for a couple of the comments where I replied kind of petty, because that's not the point of that video. The point of that video is to show how deeply serious this situation is, and, you know, me getting bogged down in the pettiness, that's taking away from the gravity of the situation. So again, I apologize for that, but I'm going to move on and address the issues. So we've got a few. I'm going to gray out the names just for anonymity, even though, of course, you can go to the video and see what users posted that. But just to respect any semblance of privacy that I possibly can, I am going to go ahead and blur out their names. That's why their names are blurred out. So one of them did say, and I quote, "Show me how stupid you are without saying it. You hate America, get the F out." Well, I replied with that. I said, I love America. I love what it's supposed to represent. Trump is a fascist dictator, and he has ruined what our flag stood for. So let me expand on that a little bit. I love the Republic. And let's make a correction. We always say that America is a democracy, and people tend to correct that pretty quickly, which they're actually right. We are a constitutional republic. It's a little bit different, but I love the Republic. And I love that we have the First Amendment. Now, the strength of our nation, it does lie in its capacity for dissent, not in the silence of conformity. Now, the moment a leader tells a citizen to get out for protesting, well, that leader really is attacking the Constitution. So you are kind of echoing what the dangerous situation is here in America. If I don't like America, get out. Here's the issue. America is founded on not liking something and doing something about it. When our forefathers first had this notion of a nation, they did not like what the king was doing in the colonies. So what did they do? Did they move out? No. They stood up against that king and founded a nation that actually welcomes dissent, a nation that welcomes opposing viewpoints, because we as a nation understand that, you know what, at the end of the day, we're not going to please everybody. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, we're going to please as many people as we possibly can and really help as many people as we possibly can by coming together, airing out our grievances, and having the government listen to those and take action on them. Let's move on. This is the one that I do want to point out where I did get a little bit petty. They put, "You're an idiot. Y-O-U-R. You are so ignorant that you can't get a job without DEI." So I did reply. I said, if you're, and I made sure to spell it correctly, going to call someone an idiot, and I kept going. I corrected grammar. You know, that was a moment of weakness. Let's focus on the main issue. So as a former DEI leader, where in the company that I was in, I co-founded a cross-cultural understanding employer resource group, and also actually a recruitment specialist who did specialize in DEI recruitment. My defense of DEI is based on my professional experience. So I believe in inclusive labor practices. I believe that they strengthen institutions. Now, executive orders that are banning DEI are, well, they're viewable discrimination that weakens our national talent pool. Hopefully that addresses the issue as opposed to getting petty like I was before. Now, there's another one here that says, "You," and it's in all caps, "you are the enemy of the U.S. You have no rights. We're coming for you." So this is actually one of the threats that I was alluding to. I did originally reply with this. Now, here's the thing. I said, "See, the difference between us is that I value your right to be angry with me over my actions. I value we can disagree out in the open, so feel free to come for me because I'll be right here." So the freedom to disagree out in the open is the entire point of the First Amendment. Now, the moment a leader claims a citizen has no rights is the moment that leader attacks the Constitution. Another one says, "You have no right to burn the American flag. Cowards and fascists burn flags." So I replied, "We all have the right to dispose of an unserviceable flag. It is protected by our most fundamental amendment. I'm burning this flag because it is a symbol of fascism now." So I do want to expand on that. So that's not an opinion. It's settled law. I'm performing a constitutional act to defend the freedom of everybody. Now, the moment a leader tells a citizen that they're going to be jailed for a protest, that flag does become morally unserviceable, because that is a very fascist view. Suppressing the public opinion is fascist. Flat out. Full stop. Now, this one right here. "You're a symbol of a candy ass." And I just replied, "Thanks for the contribution to the conversation." So again, this was another petty reply that I did, but the correct political response to any sort of attack like that should always be to focus. I am here to defend the Constitution. So in other words, I actually should have said not just "thank you for the contribution," I said, "Thank you for practicing your First Amendment right to tell me something." Now, if Trump gets his way, eventually we will have it to the point where if you say that to me, you could be jailed because your opinion is now suppressed. Another one did post, "Burn your flag, not Americans." And I absolutely agree with that. You know, I said that I made sure to list things because at the end of my video I did, and I'll do it at the end of this video as well. I have a list of things that we can do to peacefully fight this fascist regime. And I do want to say that my advocacy is explicitly about non-violent, constitutional resistance. So the true concern is for leaders who threaten to use executives' power to target and jail political opponents, to target and jail people who burn the flag, to target and jail people who just don't agree with him. He even said, Trump did say this, that he will be going after his political opponents. Here's the deal though. In America, political opponents are actually a good thing. Because at the end of the day, those political opponents are representing American people that aren't in the majority. Because America is set up to where, yes, we have majority rule, but we also have devices put in place for the minority to still have their voices heard, so that way the most American people can be helped. Now, there was another reply here. "You don't even know what fascism is. For the love of God, pick up a book and read." So I did reply with a definition. I'll lightly tap on it, and I have it over here on display. "Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian ideology that typically centers around a single dictator or oligarch." And then I expanded on that, which you can see in the comment, and I said, you know what? These are all things that Trump has actually shown to propose or act upon. So let me expand on that too. I'm an anthropologist, so I minored also in Judaic studies. So part of my study was on fascism because by default, the Jews were honestly one of the most famously persecuted groups under a fascist regime. So I actually do know a little bit about fascism, and I've also started to read Mein Kampf by Hitler, which some of the things that he says in there are echoed by Trump, who, by the way, also read Mein Kampf. So I do want to bring this out, that I know exactly what fascism is. And the rhetoric used by the current administration, which is like dehumanization, calls for retribution, basically taking power away from the legislative and judicial branches and funneling them into the executive, well, those are textbook language of fascism. The next one. Do you believe that a fascist leader or a dictator would allow your dissent? Now, I didn't reply to this just yet, so I do want to reply with this now. So the point of this protest is to act now. If we look back in our history, in Germany, Hitler originally did not have all the power that he had. And in fact, I remember that there are videos interviewing even members of the Nazi Party where they were asking, when things were happening, why didn't you stand up to Hitler? Why didn't you stop it? They would come out by saying things like, well, you know, he did this a very small action, right? Just a minute action. He did this, and yeah, it was a little disconcerting, but I let it go. And that's what it was. These little tiny bits of erosion that Hitler was doing to gain power, they were small, little steps, little baby steps at the time. And that's what Trump is doing right now. He is taking baby steps towards fascism because, again, if you just completely do it all in one go overnight, yeah, of course he's going to get stopped because it's absolutely ridiculous that America would become a fascist country. However, if you do little tiny snidbits, there'll be little breadcrumbs. You know, if we do become a fascist country, we can look back at the breadcrumbs and see exactly what Trump was doing to become a fascist dictator. So basically, it's designed to help us voluntarily relinquish our rights. We need to fight to keep our rights because they are being slowly eroded away by the Trump administration. So here's another comment, something along the lines of, you know, so CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NPR, they all say the same thing. That would be propaganda, not news. And you know what? That does sound absolutely right. That, yeah, it would be propaganda, not news, right? But here's the deal. We don't need to go with counter conspiracies or whataboutisms. We need to rely on primary source analysis. So like the executive orders, the court filings, the public speeches. The issue is not media bias, which, yes, I will admit, broadcast companies like CNN and CBS and such, yeah, those typically are left-leaning, biased news reporters. However, I do also want to point out that when I actually go through news sources, and yes, I will get news from CNN or MSNBC or anything, but to be frank, I also get my news from Fox News. I also get my news from Newsnet. I get my news from Scripps News. I get my news from Newsmax. I get my news from all sorts of outlets. And I actually did start utilizing a new news outlet that I really am liking called Ground News. Legal Eagle is another channel that I follow, and they've been kind of, I wouldn't say pushing it, but they've been advertising for it on their channel. So I decided to give it a try. And it's pretty awesome because it does show every article. It actually aggregates all articles from different news sources. And then it will actually flat out show if that news outlet is left-leaning, right-leaning, center-based, however it goes. It also says how factual they typically are in their news coverage. And on top of that, it actually will tell me if I'm starting to become biased. It will show, here's what I normally read. Do I normally read stuff that is right-leaning? Do I normally read stuff that is left-leaning? Do I normally read stuff that is center-based? And I can adjust how I read my news. Now, here's the other thing. When I get my news, I don't treat it as gospel because in this information age, the news is trying to keep up with the speed of the internet. And sometimes that means that the news won't be able to corroborate certain stories as effectively as they used to before the internet came out. So I do understand that sometimes they may get it wrong. So what I do is I take that news story and I utilize it to go find the original sources of that story. So whether them reporting on an executive order, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the White House website and look up that executive order for myself and take a look at it and make sure that what they were reporting is factually accurate. And then, of course, I can base my opinion on that. But let's go right back to it and let's talk about propaganda for a second. What do you think the White House Wire is, which the Trump administration created? It is a news aggregator that, well, typically only aggregates news that are favorable to the Trump administration or Republicans as a whole. That is really by definition propaganda. A state news outlet, state news, by the way, state news owned by the state, which is only propagating news stories that are favorable to the current administration. That is the absolute textbook definition of propaganda. Here's another one that got brought up that I really didn't reply to, but honestly, this goes again to the fascist point. Trump commuted the prison sentence of George Santos and called for his immediate release. So this pardon power that Trump is utilizing, yeah, that's an absolute power that he has. Using it is an abuse of that check. It erodes the public trust in the judicial branch's ability to enforce the law impartially. Trump pardoned Jan 6th insurrectionists. It is on video of some January 6th insurrectionists literally violently attacking Capitol Police, and those people were pardoned for it. Now, this actually echoes an historical precedent of a fascist regime. The Nazi Party, when Hitler took power of the Nazi Party, he ended up releasing those who were arrested for the Beer Hall Putsch, which was also a failed coup attempt by Hitler to gain power. Here's another one. Democrats and liberals like yourself have caused nothing but hate and pain, but we are slowly weeding you out. Good luck. Now, this language about weeding me out, it's chilling because it mirrors the rhetoric on my authoritarian checklist. This is a language of dehumanization, basically lumping me in with Democrats and liberals and just applying the name and turning it into a group as opposed to me as an individual. That's dehumanization, flat out. So I'm going to be right here, openly and legally, by the way, because you know what? That's the definition of a free, pluralistic republic. These are just a few of the comments that came through. And I did want to address a few of these, okay? Again, I do want to make sure to say that the ones where I was a little bit petty, I'm so sorry for that. Let's get back to the heart of the matter that Trump, at the end of the day, even though I didn't want to compare him before, has a lot of the same viewpoints and a lot even of the same actions as Hitler. We can see the correlations if we open up our history books and we look at what Trump is doing now. There are many, many, many correlations. Now, again, I'm not saying that Trump is as evil as Hitler was, because you know what? Objectively, Hitler was an evil dictator. Now, for me, at least in my court of opinion, the jury is still out on if Trump is truly evil or if at the end of the day, he's just power hungry. But let me be clear. Our history is there so we can learn from the mistakes that our ancestors made. Not to repeat them, and certainly not to do what Trump is doing and use them as a guidebook to repeat history. We need to stop him now. So that is why I burned the flag. I was challenging the very post that he made, the very executive order that he signed that said that if I do this, I will be put in jail. Because you know what? That is my First Amendment right. And if you look at the video, if you go back and watch the video, you'll see how nervous I was to do it. My hands were shaking. I was breathing heavy at times. I was sighing at times because you know what? I love my country. I do. I love my country. I love what my country was founded on. I love the ideals that are supposed to govern our country. I am terrified at where our country is heading. I am terrified at how easily so many people can be blinded to what Trump is doing. I am terrified that even when presented with those facts, they're so ingrained in their ideology that they won't change. That's terrifying to me. And I was hoping that this video would help enact that change. I was hoping that this video would get to the president because you know what? I am challenging him. I am flat out challenging Donald Trump to take away my rights. Feel free to try because at the end of the day, those are my rights. They are protected by almost 250 years of presidents. Almost 250 years, we have had a free country. So I challenged Donald Trump, and I did this action to challenge him because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not going to let him take away my rights. I'm not going to let him take away the rights of all the other American citizens. And by the way, immigrants too. Even if you're not an American citizen, you are protected by the Constitution. That's another fallacy that people keep thinking is, oh, you're not protected if you don't have citizenship. Well, actually, yeah, you do. America was founded on the ideology that, you know what? We are all, the world, we are all created equal. And because of that, we all receive equal protection. Mr. Trump, you are not upholding the Constitution. You swore to the American people that you would protect and uphold the Constitution. And by doing things like saying that you will arrest and jail anybody burning a flag, that spits in the face of the Constitution. That is the complete opposite of what you swore to uphold. But you know what? what can I expect from somebody who almost every other word out of their mouth is a, well, easily verified lie? Now, I'm going to be doing another video as well, where I'm going to be going over the other things that Trump is doing to show evidence that he is attempting to turn America into a fascist regime. I'm really hoping, to be honest, that the ones who still agree with Trump are watching these videos. And I really hope that over time, some of you can come over and realize this isn't about party. So keep an eye out for the next video to come up. And again, I welcome the comments to come on. Let's have this conversation while we still can, to be honest, because again, free speech is in jeopardy. So let's have these conversations before it's too late. Thanks so much for watching. I'm James Schofield, and I'll be seeing you next time.